I want to say something that might be uncomfortable to hear about the team culture you've worked so hard to build. Your team may be dying of politeness. The niceness, the smooth meetings, the absence of friction, it may not be a sign of health. It may be a sign that people have quietly concluded that honesty is not safe here. That the relational cost of saying what they actually think is higher than the organizational cost of keeping it to themselves. And so they perform alignment while privately holding reservations. And the team functions well enough on the surface while something essential is slowly eroding underneath. And here's the harder truth. If you're the only person on the team who holds people accountable, if correction and confrontation flow exclusively from the leader downward, well, your team is not as healthy as it appears. You've created an accountability vacuum, and you're filling it all alone. And a team that depends entirely on one person's willingness to address every gap, every slipping standard, every behavior that is damaging the collective is fragile in ways that will eventually become visible. So today we're talking about what it takes to build something more durable than that. A team where accountability is not the leader's burden alone, but a shared discipline practiced peer to peer. And it's all right here, right now, and only on the Five Gifts podcast.
You're listening to the Five Gifts Podcast, a weekly show designed to equip leaders in the Spirit-filled church. I'm Bruce Ritter, and along with my co-host Charles Russell, we offer insights for leading the local church in the fullest expression of Jesus. If you're interested in learning more about practical theology, the gifts of the Spirit, and spiritual disciplines, this is the show for you. Welcome to the Five Gifts Podcast.
Welcome back to the Five Gifts Podcast. I'm Charles Russell, here with Bruce Ritter, and this is Season 3, Episode 19, Part 4 of our Team Dynamics series. Well, hey, so glad that you're here today. So glad you joined us, Bruce. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I had a great weekend, and we want to everybody to know we had a little delay from yesterday's drop, so it's coming out a little bit later this week than we anticipated, but we're glad to be with everyone, and I hope that we're catching everybody on a very good day of the week for you as you're listening to us. Hope that what we can share today will help you be productive and build a healthy culture in your teams. So we want to take stock of where we are in the series. We've been working hard building some concepts for you that I think build on each other. Of course, episode 16, Charles, we talked about the foundation of any good team culture. That's where we build a vulnerability-based trust, where the kind of relational safety that allows teams to speak honestly and replace a performance mindset, kind of putting our best selves forward at the expense of being honest. And then episode 17 built on the idea of we need to mine for conflict. We've got to allow healthy teams to work through ideological tension and talk about how, as leaders, we actually want to create that. So people are discussing and talking passionately as we begin to work towards building functional, good action steps for our teams. And then last week, we introduced the first team concept. That was a shift from people at your staff level, your executive level, representing the staff or the executive level team first, because everything happens in that team kind of cascades downwardly, and it's important that that departmental leaders are making sure that they're in your staff meeting, that they're the ones that are loyal to that first team. And so we have to talk about how to close the gap between just a theoretical alignment and real operational unity. And, Charles, part of that has to do with what I think a concept we initiated last week. We're going to talk more about it today, and that's the danger zone.
That's right. So cue up the Kenny Loggins music again. It's the Top Gun theme. We're taking the highway into the danger zone. All right. Well, look, today we're going to talk about, let's just continue kind of building the architecture of these first teams, because trust, conflict, and first team commitment all they build toward a single capacity that is that is among the most powerful. It often has the most avoided dynamics in leadership culture, and that would be peer-to-peer accountability. It's not the leader catching problems and correcting them. We're talking about peers holding on one another to the standards the team has collectively committed to. So colleagues entering the discomfort of a direct conversation rather than routing their concerns through the leader, or worse, just letting the issue slide entirely. So we're going to cover what makes peer accountability possible, and the three laws that give it structure, what it actually looks like to enter the danger in real time, and how this transforms a team from one that is managed by its leader into one that governs itself.
Yeah, and before we talk about the mechanics of peer accountability, we need to revisit the foundation, because, again, peer accountability without the right foundation is really not accountability at all. It is attack. And the difference matters, I think, enormously. So, again, everything in the series has been building toward this episode, and the reason is straightforward. Peer-to-peer accountability is only possible on a foundation of genuine, vulnerability-based trust. And without it, a direct conversation from a colleague about your performance or behavior doesn't feel like an act of service. It can actually feel like a threat. And people who feel threatened don't respond with openness. They defend, they retaliate, they withdraw, and the team ends up in a worse place than it was before the conversation happened. So when it comes to vulnerability-based trust, we're talking about the confidence that your colleagues' intentions toward you are genuinely good, and they're not cataloging your weaknesses to use against you. That their challenge is coming from the care for the team rather than their own self-interest, rather than trying to cover their own skin. So it's what makes peer accountability feel different from attack. When a team has trust, then a colleague is saying, listen, your follow-through on this has been slipping and it's affecting the rest of us. And that's experienced as something a good teammate says, rather than the adversarial mindset. And so Larry Osborne, he describes this kind of team where this is real, and he calls it, of course, the sticky teams, if you're familiar with any of his writing. It's one where camaraderie is not destroyed by strong differences. And these are not the people who are simply getting along. They're people who have built enough relational history and genuine trust that, if we could say it this way, they fight fair in the open about ideas and behavior. Conflict is happening around ideas, not around personality conflicts. And so it's then presented in a completely unified front once the team decides on the course of action. Once that decision becomes the guiding next step for the team, then again, it's done with unity, because deep discussion has taken place around it. The disagreement doesn't fracture the team or the relationships on the team, because those team relationships are strong enough to hold it. Now, the contrast with the dysfunctional team is specific and observable. On teams where trust is absent, then weakness gets concealed rather than admitted. And Charles, that's where things like back channel politics begin to replace direct conversation. That's where your passive aggressive types start to work their bad magic. That's where meetings become performances where people manage their image rather than gatherings where people solve real problems. Interpersonal risk is avoided because no one is confident that vulnerability will be met with grace. Now, on a sticky team, mistakes are admitted without hesitation. Apologies are offered and received very fluidly. Meetings are anticipated as the place where real issues get resolved. And believe me, there's a There's a momentum that happens on that kind of a team. That's a team that's energized about getting things done and moving towards successful outcomes. And conflict on those teams is genuine, it's direct. It can be uncomfortable conflict about things that matter. And then it's understood as the mechanism by which the team gets better, not as a threat to be avoided. And so the tools that help build this foundation are worth naming practically. Personal history exercises can give team members context for one another's behavior rather than just patterns to judge. Again, this is a leadership level tool. It allows for the team to understand those personality frameworks that help us understand why colleagues respond differently under pressure. Anything that replaces the default of attributing negative motives with the discipline of seeking understanding. And when you know enough about a person's history, Charles, this has been true of me, when I know something about their history and their wiring and their personality, that I'm able to interpret their behavior charitably rather than being cynical. And it's that interpersonal discomfort required to challenge them, then that decreases significantly too. And when that decreased comfort is taken care of, that's what makes peer accountability accessible rather than exceptional.
Well, you're challenging me, Bruce. What I'm realizing is I need to cut out 3 words from my leadership vocabulary if I'm going to practice this kind of peer-to-peer accountability. Now, it's a Southern term, but it's one that is passive aggressive for sure. Bless your heart. Man, those words that's really powerful. What you're talking about, building this kind of culture of peer-to-peer accountability, and oftentimes, man, as Southerners, I can only speak behind myself, speak for myself. That term, and not even that term, but what it stands for of bless your heart, really is an attitude. It's a mindset that we just kind of throw out there to kind of gloss over and smooth over the rough edges.
Yeah,
makes it sound like we really care or we're really empathizing, but it's rather it's really to the speaker. I'm communicating something far different than what the listener is hearing, and there's no accountability in it. It's just a false front, and so I mean it's funny when you say it, but the truth behind that is it really it's denigrating. It can really damage any kind of accountability relationships that we have to have. So if I've ever told you out there in this world, bless your heart, I apologize. Please forgive me. I should have held you more accountable. So you know what? Well, look, Bruce has laid just a phenomenal foundation for us, and so now with that kind of solid foundation in place, the question becomes structural, and it's really all about what creates the conditions in which peer accountability can actually be practiced consistently rather than just occasionally, and not just by the bravest people on the team, because good intentions are not sufficient. Structure is absolutely required. So accountability with clarity is impossible. You can't hold someone to a standard that exists only in the leader's head, or that different people on the team would define differently if asked. Ambiguity is certainly the enemy of accountability, and it's far more prevalent in ministry leadership teams than most leaders realize. And so before peer accountability can function, 3 foundational conditions have to be established. The first is the publication of goals and standards. So accountability requires crystal clear, publicly agreed upon commitments, not a general sense of what the team is working toward, but specific named outcomes that every person on the team would describe the same way if asked independently. One of the most revealing exercises that a leadership team can do is ask every member to write down separately the single most important goal for the team in the current quarter. If the answers vary significantly, and oftentimes they do, then the team really does not have a clarity problem. They have an ambiguity problem that is actively feeding individual interpretation and making collective accountability structurally impossible. So the practice that addresses this issue is what we would call, or we refer to, cascading messaging. It's that 10-minute end of meeting discipline we introduced in the previous episode. There's explicit review of what was decided, shared agreement on what gets communicated, and then what stays at the leadership level. Synchronized deployment within a defined window. These steps are not just communication tools, they're accountability tools, because when everyone leaves the room with identical clarity about what was committed to, there's no ambiguity to hide behind when follow through is absent. The second law is regular progress reviews. So structure forces the difficult conversations that human nature instinctively avoids. Simple, consistent rhythms of reviewing the team's scoreboard together. Not just individual performance check-ins with the leader, but collective review of shared commitments. It moves accountability from the leader's observation to the team's shared awareness. And when the team reviews together and one person's area is visibly not moving, now it's no longer just the leader's knowledge, it's the room's knowledge. And that shared awareness is what creates the conditions for peer pressure to operate, not as social coercion, but as the natural consequence of people who care about the same outcomes, holding one another to the standards that they've agreed to together. And then the third law is team-based recognition and reward. Organizations get what they honor, and if individual achievement is what gets celebrated, then the person who hit their numbers, the department that exceeded expectations, the message is clear: your personal results matter more than the team's collective results. And that message produces individual stars who optimize for their own performance, but it's at the expense of the team's coherence. So first, team health requires that we visibly and consistently honor collective results, not to the exclusion of individual excellence, but really with a clear signal that the team winning matters more than any single person's contribution being recognized.
Charles, I just love what you said at the beginning, that accountability without clarity is not possible. And I think you really led us through, especially those 3 steps that help bring that to the surface and help that become something actionable for the team. So when those structural conditions are in place that you've mentioned, we get to the most personally demanding part of the entire conversation. And that's the actual moment when accountability is practiced. Now, I know in ministry leadership, when it comes to discipleship and wanting to see people make strides in their faith, we always try to put people on an accountability track where we want them to make themselves vulnerable to other people, to ask them hard questions and help them stay consistent in their faith. And Charles, I've always found that accountability is easy to talk about. It's much more complicated to expect. So hopefully we put some things in practice that help lead to the kind of accountability that we're talking about. We don't want to talk about this as theory. We want to talk about it as principles that we can not only affirm, but actually experience in conversations with our teammates, with specific colleagues, especially when it comes to things that aren't working. And so here we are. We've set up the precipice here. We're about to enter the danger here, the danger zone. Remember that rebuilding a team culture that has been operating without peer accountability it's not comfortable. In fact, Patrick Lencioni, I believe he compares it to resetting a broken bone. And if you've ever had that done, if you've ever had a bone reset or a joint that was dislocated to be reset, that is actually more painful than the original fracture, because you're doing it deliberately. You're doing that with full awareness of what it's going to feel like. And that discomfort is not a sign that something is going wrong. It is the cost of doing something right, but something we've avoided for too long. And so really the moment of truth, that specific real-time instance when peer accountability either happens or it doesn't, it's quite identifiable. It's that exact point when you notice something that needs to be addressed, but a colleague being disingenuous in a meeting, a commitment that has slipped and not been performed without acknowledgement. That's where a behavior that is damaging to the team and that everyone in the room has noticed, but no one's naming. That moment has a very short window. And the longer it goes unaddressed, the more it signals to the entire team that the standard is actually lower than what the team has stated. So the first discipline is not waiting for the right time. The right time is almost always the moment you notice it, or as close to it as the conversation allows. There was a great book put out several years ago about the 1 minute manager. And again, the 1 minute manager is not about doing everything inside a defined 60 seconds, but it's doing things immediately. It's taking care of the things that need to be taken care of without delay. Usually when we defer to later, that's usually a strategy for avoidance. And listen, speaking as a classic avoider, a lot of times you're going to find that's an adaptive part of your leadership. That's something you've got to be intentional about doing, especially when it's not natural to you. And I think I've said this before. It feels like wisdom. It feels like grace. But in all honesty, you're just delaying some real dysfunction on your team. So again, we want to be able to not wait for the right time. We want to take care of things immediately. The second discipline is what we call demanding real-time permission for the discomfort that productive conflict generates. You know, when a room gets uncomfortable, when a genuine disagreement surfaces, I think we've all felt the hair on the back of our neck stand up when we know, oh, this is getting tense. That's where people start to feel that relational friction of honest engagement. And again, for most of us, I think the instinct can be to back down, just to smooth it over. Let's find some diplomacy here and let the tension diffuse a little bit. But a leader who wants to build peer accountability does the opposite. They name the discomfort explicitly, and they reframe it. For example, you may say, listen, what you're feeling in this room right now is not a problem. This is the kind of energy, the kind of conversation that produces the kind of energy that healthy teams need. So let's stay at it. And that reframe is not manipulation. It's coaching. It gives people permission to continue past the point in which they would normally retreat. Now listen, as a leader, that is not just a skill, that's an art, but it's something that you work at. I would say the third discipline is shifting the source of accountability from the leader to the peers on the team. If a team member fails to deliver, and that's affecting another person on the team, then the person most directly affected should be the one who names it, not the leader. And again, this is not retaliation. It's not revenge. It's about that team being committed to success. And so the leader's instinct a lot of times is to step in and to address it. That's understandable. But part of you building and empowering your leaders is to act on that instinct every time. When you do that, when you act on that instinct, it removes the opportunity for peer accountability to develop. And that's what you want. That's how you empower your team members to take that responsibility when that happens. The leader's role is to hold space for the peer conversation to happen. It's to ensure that the resolution is reached. It's to manage those moments and step in only when the team has genuinely failed to address something that needs addressing. Your goal is not to prevent the fight. I want to say that delicately. Your point is not to prevent the conflict, but you're rather there to ensure that it happens, obviously with some degree of order and respect, but also where it produces clarity. Now, the fourth discipline is resisting the urge to protect people from necessary discomfort. I know this doesn't sound like a Christian meeting, but believe me, it's important to the health of your team. The most common way leaders undermine peer accountability is by interrupting conflict prematurely. Again, that's that avoidance mechanism kicking in. I'm just going to step in here and smooth the tension that was actually moving toward resolution if we would just let it play out. Or we tend to translate a peer's direct challenge into something softer, maybe more palatable. Again, that feels like protection, but it's actually a withdrawal of the respect that a genuine challenge communicates. And so when you protect someone from a direct peer conversation, you're implicitly communicating that they can't handle it. Believe me, you want to communicate to your team that they can navigate this, that they can handle the fair, balanced criticism. So let those conversations happen. Trust the foundation has been built on your team, and hold the conviction that short-term discomfort of a direct exchange is far less costly than the long-term erosion of a team that has learned it can avoid accountability by waiting or managing conversations in a way that allowed that discomfort to pass. Again, conflict on your team is one of the best energizers. It's one of the best releases of momentum. And so learn to manage that well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's not a problem that's to be solved. That's a tension that you have to constantly, continually manage. And that's not a comfortable thing to sit here and think about. I need to actually let them kind of fight, let them navigate and work through the conflict. And our admonition would be absolutely yes. Yeah, don't step in too soon. Now here's our promise to you. If you let them fight and it doesn't work out, it gets out of hand, contact Bruce at coachingcardia.com. He will come and put them in a headlock. And then you get free shots, the leader or pastor, whatever you need to do to correct the situation. But don't step in too fast. That's where we're here. We're here to serve you. All right, that's enough joking around. Let's try to pull this all together and try to make this immediately actionable. Because the gap between understanding a concept and actually practicing it in a meeting next week is really where most leadership development kind of stalls out. So a team that has that's built vulnerability-based trust, they've learned to mine for conflict, even committed to first team loyalty, and now have developed the capacity for peer accountability that doesn't just function more smoothly. It produces results that a team without those dynamics simply cannot, because more of its collective capacity is available for the mission rather than being consumed by self-protection or even, as Bruce referenced earlier, these back-channel politics and even the accumulated cost of avoided conversations. But the final piece, the thing that really makes all of the relational and cultural work connect to actual outcomes is a shared scoreboard. And this is a clear, agreed upon, publicly held definition of what winning looks like for this team in this season. It's not a strategic plan document that lives in a shared drive. It's a living, visible, regularly reviewed set of commitments that that the team looks at together and measures itself against together. The scoreboard does several things simultaneously. It eliminates the ambiguity that allows underperformance to go unaddressed. It shifts the question from what does the leader expect from me to what did we commit to together? And then it creates the conditions in which peer pressure, not as coercion, but as the natural consequence of shared ownership, can now finally do its work. And so when the team reviews the scoreboard and everyone can see that one area is not moving, the conversation doesn't have to be initiated by the leader. It's initiated by reality. And so teammates who are genuinely invested in the collective outcome now are motivated to address that reality directly because they understand that their own outcomes are connected to it. The unity that makes all this possible, what Osborne calls the unity factor, it's not something that happens to a team. It's built. It's built deliberately, intentionally, and it's built over time through exactly the sequence this entire series has been describing. It's trust that makes honesty safe, conflict that produces genuine clarity, it's commitment that is real rather than performed, accountability that's shared rather than delegated upward, and a scoreboard that keeps everyone oriented to the same definition of success.
Charles, that's a powerful illustration. I think every leader that's listening to us, you could probably think of a few things that would define the win for your team. And sometimes that win is going to be in a particular missional objective for your church, or your organization. But I think that really keeps things in focus, and it allows the team to realize what they're working toward together. There's three things that are worth doing, I think, before your next team meeting. That's certainly one of them, is clarifying the scoreboard. Just begin to have conversations with people on your leadership team and write down independently the single most important goal for the team this quarter. Don't discuss it first. Write it down separately and then compare them. If answers are not essentially identical, you have an ambiguity problem that's upstream of everything else, and this is the place to fix that. So work on that. Begin to bring everybody into the same understanding of what the scoreboard should look like for your team. A second is, again, mind for conflict in your next meeting. Now, I said last week how important it is to get good at this. To get good, you need to practice it. So don't start out with something big. I mean, if your team is not used to conflict, if they're used to muting it and couching terms in ways that diffuse conflict, then why don't you find something that's safe enough where you can, maybe it's an issue that your team has dealt with before, and that you didn't allow conflict to continue in the discussion. You maybe short-circuited it. Why don't you bring it back up? And when you notice someone holding back in a dissenting opinion, and you notice, if you're watching for it, hey, draw it out. Call it back out. Say, I want to revisit this. And name what you observed. Give it a name. Create the permission for what it represents. And don't let the meeting end with agreement that was not genuinely tested. And I would say third is institute the what might be a 10-minute cascade at the end of every significant meeting. Just 3 questions before everyone leaves. Number 1, what did we actually decide? Number 2, what needs to be communicated to the broader team and what stays here? And then finally, when does that communication need to happen? And if the team cannot agree on those 3 things, they've not fully committed to what they think they committed to.
Well, we're kind of coming to the end of this episode, and I think it's a powerful question that's worth sitting with and pondering, considering once you've finished viewing our episode today. And here's the question: where is your team settling for artificial harmony? Where is your team settling for artificial harmony? And then a second part of that would be, what would it look like to lead them into the danger instead? let that just kind of settle and resonate with you. You can always go back and rewind, write it down. But again, where is your team settling for artificial harmony? And then what would it look like to lead them into the danger instead? Not to create conflict, for its own sake. Not to make people uncomfortable as a leadership philosophy, but to really begin building a team that trusts one another deeply enough to tell the truth, that fights fairly enough to reach genuine clarity, and commits fully enough to be held accountable, and cares enough about the collective mission to enter the discomfort that honest accountability requires. High-performing teams stay together not because everything's easy, but because they've collectively refused to settle for the slow erosion of artificial harmony. They understand that the short-term pain of a direct conversation really is far less costly than the long-term consequences of a team that has stopped being honest with itself. And so, if those kind of questions resonate with you, if the topic we've been talking about today has really captured your attention, and has generated some thoughts of, I really need to begin building this kind of culture, then we're here to help. We're genuinely here to serve. And if you'd like coaching on implementing peer accountability in a specific ministry context, then you can connect with us. You can find me at charlesrusselltraining.com, charlesrussellministries.com, or again, Bruce is there at coachingcardia.com, and we would be honored to work with you. We work with other ministries and ministry leaders. We come alongside them, help them build teams that are not just theologically aligned, but truly operationally healthy. And so we would be honored to come alongside you and be a partner and serve the ministry and the mission that you're leading. Well, next episode is the final installment of the Team Dynamics series. We're going to bring it all together by looking at what a fully functioning, healthy team actually produces over time. Not just better meetings, not just cleaner decisions, but a culture of collective result orientation that outlasts any single leader and becomes the defining characteristic of the organization itself. So we look forward to seeing you next time right here on the 5 Gifts Podcast.
You've been listening to the 5 Gifts Podcast. If you would like to take the next step as a spiritual leader, we invite you to visit either of our websites or contact us for leadership coaching. We can help you reach the next level in your own growth and leadership. We provide leadership, spiritual gift, and personality assessments that give you a better grasp of your leadership style. And we also create a customized growth plan that empowers you to reach your full kingdom potential. We can't wait to hear from you.